Close your eyes for a moment and imagine this. It's night at Angkor. The air is thick and warm. Frogs are singing all around a dark moat, and the moon is just bright enough to catch on something long and coiled, rising out of the water.
You walk closer, and you realize it's not just one snake. It's a whole stone body stretched like a bridge along the causeway. At the end, 7 great heads fan out like a stone umbrella, the scales glistening where the moonlight hits. It feels like this serpent is guarding the line between water and land, between night and the temple world ahead.
Those stone serpents, those nagas, are everywhere in Cambodia, on bridges, on roofs, wrapped around Buddha images. But they're not just decoration. They're part of a whole way of seeing land, water, and ancestry. Welcome back to Ancient Echoes, where every carving, every story, and every melody has a voice. I'm your host, James Bradley.
And I'm your co-host, Samnang Bradley. Today, we're following one of my favorite characters in Khmer culture, the Naga. If you've ever walked up the stone causeway to Angkor Wat or crossed the village bridge in Cambodia, you've probably met one already, even if you didn't know its name.
In this episode, we're going to follow the winding body of the Naga, from underwater kingdoms and royal marriages to temple balustrades and village shrines. By the end, you'll never look at those serpent railings the same way again. We're joined by 2 wonderful guests. First, we have Dr. Shrey Lin, a Khmer art historian who spent years studying serpent imagery across Angkor and other temple sites. Shrey Lin, thank you for being here.
Thank you, James. I'm very happy to be here and to talk about my favorite stone, snakes.
And we're also honored to have with us Lokta Dara, a village elder and storyteller, whose Naga tales have been passed around evening fires and pagoda courtyards for decades. Lokta, welcome to Ancient Echoes.
Thank you, child. It makes me smile to know that people far away are listening to our old stories. The Nagas will be pleased.
So, let's start at the beginning, or at least one of the beginnings. When we say Naga in Cambodia, who or what are we actually talking about? Because it's a lot more than just a snake, right?
Yes, exactly. In Khmer tradition, the Naga is a serpent being that can belong to both the natural and the supernatural worlds. Some Nagas have 1 head, some have 7, 9, even more in certain myths. They can live in rivers, lakes, and the sea, but they also appear in the sky as rain clouds and in the stone of our temples.
So already they're crossing boundaries, water and sky, nature and myth.
Exactly. And there's one very famous story that many Cambodians grew up hearing, which explains not only who the Nagas are, but actually where the Khmer people come from.
Ah, the love story. I grew up hearing this one from my grandparents. Lukta, would you like to tell it the way you would in the village?
Yes, this story travels a long way. Listen, long ago there was a prince from India. Some call him Kaundinya. He sailed across the sea and reached a strange land covered in mist. When his ship arrived, the waters began to churn, and from beneath the waves came a beautiful princess riding on the back of a great Naga. Her name was Soma. She was not only a princess, she was the daughter of the Naga king. The prince and the princess fell in love. They married, and the Naga king wanted to give them a place to live. So he drank up the water that covered the land. Imagine that, a vast flooded plain, and this serpent king just inhales the water until dry land appears. On that land, the prince and princess began a new kingdom, and from their children, many say, came the Khmer people. So we say, in a way, that we are descended from a Naga princess.
I love how that turns the Naga from something people might fear, like a random snake, into an ancestor, almost a grandparent who shaped the land for you.
Yes, and this is very important. For Khmer people, the Naga is not just a monster or an animal. It is family, it is protector, it is a bridge between India and Cambodia, between water and land, and between past and present.
And it also literally explains why Cambodia is so connected to water. If your mythical grandfather is a serpent king who drank the sea, it makes sense that rivers, lakes, and floods feel like living relatives, not just geography.
So that's our Naga origin story. An Indian prince, a Naga princess, a land revealed from under the water. Let's follow that serpent ancestor for a moment into stone. Because if you've seen photos of Angkor Wat or Bayon, you've definitely seen Nagas, even if you didn't realize what you were looking at.
Srey Lin, can we go on a little imaginary tour? Maybe we start where our cold open began, that long bridge to Angkor Wat.
Gladly. So picture yourself at Angkor Wat in the early morning. The sky is still pale. You're standing in front of the long sandstone causeway that crosses the moat. On either side of you is what looks like a stone railing. But if you look closely, you see that railing is actually the body of a Naga. At the far end, closest to the temple, that railing rises and curls into a many-headed Naga, often 7 heads, sometimes more. The heads fan out like a lotus. Their mouths open slightly, and you can see the fin-like crests and the flared hoods. The body stretches all the way back to the edge of the moat, like a serpent stretched between water and temple.
So that whole rail you casually lean on for a selfie is actually a serpent bridge.
Yes, and that's not by accident. In many Khmer temples, Nagas form balustrades on bridges and stairways because they are literally connecting 2 realms, the outside world and the sacred enclosure, the human domain and the realm of the gods. You are, symbolically, walking along the body of the Naga into a different space.
I like to tell visitors, when you cross that causeway, imagine you're walking on your ancestor's back. It makes you walk a little more respectfully, a little more slowly.
What about Bayon, the temple with all the smiling faces? Where do the Nagas show up there?
Bayon also has Naga balustrades, but there the Nagas sometimes appear at the base of stairways as guardians. Imagine approaching a steep stair. On either side, at the bottom, there is a coiled serpent figure. Its many heads rise to meet you. You pass between them to start your climb. Again, you are crossing a threshold. The Naga marks the boundary.
So, Nagas are like giant, elegant, you are now entering sacred space signs.
They are a living threshold. And if you look closely at different temples, like Preah Khan or smaller shrines, you will see Nagas not only along walkways, but at the corners of roofs, curling up like flames. Sometimes they shelter a Buddha image, forming an umbrella of serpent heads above him.
We actually did a whole video where I walk around a smaller temple and just point out Nagas in all the places you don't notice at first. Roof corners, stair edges, even the ends of lintels. I'll link that in the companion notes so you can pause this episode later and literally see what Srey Lin is describing.
We'll put that on our social media and my show notes as well, because I know, listening to this, you might be thinking, okay, 7-headed serpent on a bridge, I get it, but I need a picture. Before we move away from the temples, could you give listeners one simple spot the Naga tip for Angkor Wat, one for Bayon, and maybe one for a smaller or lesser-known site?
Of course. At Angkor Wat, the easiest is the main causeway. When you arrive, before you rush forward, stop, touch the railing, and follow it with your eyes until you find where it curls into heads. That's your Naga. At Bayon, look at the approaches to the temple. When you walk across the bridges leading to the central structure, again, look at the sides. You will see Nagas being held by rows of gods and demons. This is part of the famous churning of the ocean of milk scene. The Naga is the rope in this cosmic tug-of-war.
So there, the serpent is literally the engine of the universe, being pulled and churned.
Yes, and at a smaller temple, let's say Bante Sri, you can look up to the roof edges. The little curling shapes that look like flames, with a hint of scales, often those are stylized Nagas too. Once you see them, you cannot unsee them.
And just to say, you don't have to be at a big, famous temple. Even in small provincial shrines, you'll find Nagas curling along stairways or painted on ceilings. They're like a thread weaving through the whole country.
Let's follow that thread from stone to water. Because Lokta, you mentioned the Naga king drinking up the sea. And Srey Lin, you said Nagas live in rivers and lakes. How do Nagas relate to Cambodia's water, to rain and rice fields?
In the countryside, when we talk about water, we talk about Nagas. When the rains come late, some people say the Nagas are sleeping. When there is too much water, a flood, they say the Nagas are angry. It is a way of remembering that water has its own spirit.
We have stories of Nagas living under big lakes. For example, people say there is a Naga palace under some of the deep pools and old barais, those ancient reservoirs. If you drop something precious there, the Naga king might keep it in his hall of treasures.
I remember as a kid being warned not to swim too far into certain ponds because the Naga will pull you down if you're not respectful. It was part safety talk, part spiritual talk.
And from a symbolic perspective, Nagas are very much connected to fertility and the success of the rice harvest. If the rains come in balance, if the river rises and falls correctly, people feel that the Nagas and other water spirits are in harmony. So you can see why they appear so often at bridges, culverts, and near rice fields in sculpture.
So the Naga isn't just this ancient myth from a dusty book. It's also present when someone looks at a swollen river and quietly wonders if the spiritual world is happy or upset.
Yes, and the stories help people make sense of surprises. There is one tale I often tell children. A boy falls into the river during a storm. Everyone is afraid. But later he returns, and he says he was taken to a shining palace under the water, with jewel columns and Naga children playing. They gave him back because his parents were crying so much on the bank.
That is beautiful and a little unsettling in the best fairy tale way.
You can hear how these stories also teach values. The river is dangerous, yes, but it's also a place of generosity and power. You respect it. You don't just conquer it. You make offerings. You say thank you for the fish and the water.
And this idea of offering and respect brings us to where most people in Cambodia meet Nagas today, not only in myth and in temples, but in everyday designs, on pagoda roofs, on ritual objects, even on clothing and tattoos. Srey Lin, if someone walks into a modern Cambodian pagoda, where might they see Nagas without realizing it?
When you enter a pagoda compound, look up at the roof first. Along the roof edges, you'll often see finials, curving shapes at the corners that look like flames or serpents. Many of those are Naga heads or tails, stylized into very elegant curves. Inside, if you look at the paintings on the ceiling, especially near the entrances, you may see Nagas pictured below the Buddha or forming a canopy over him. This refers to the story of the Naga Muchalinda sheltering the Buddha from rain. So again, the serpent becomes protector, shade, umbrella.
So if you see a Buddha sitting calmly under what looks like a fan of serpent heads, that's not a horror movie scene. That's a moment of protection and peace.
Exactly. Outside the pagoda, on the stairways leading up, you'll often see Nagas forming the rails, just as at the ancient temples. Sometimes they are brightly painted, green, gold, red, with glass inlays for the scales. Children run their hands along them as they race up the steps.
You also see Nagas on ceremonial objects, the spouts of some water vessels, the handles of incense burners, the edges of offering trays. If there's a graceful, curling creature with a scaled body and maybe a hooded head, chances are you've got a Naga.
And beyond ritual, what about on clothing, jewelry, even tattoos nowadays?
On traditional textiles, especially along borders of skirts or scarves, you sometimes see repeated wave-like or serpent-like patterns. In some regions, these are understood as Naga motifs, stylized so much they become almost abstract. Modern jewelers create bracelets and rings that coil like a small Naga around your wrist or finger. And yes, many young people choose Naga tattoos, coiled around the arm, or a small many-headed Naga on the back or chest.
So, for listeners traveling to Cambodia or Khmer diaspora rediscovering this imagery, if you start to look for a sinuous curve with scales, a hooded head, or many tiny heads fanning out, you might suddenly realize you are surrounded by Nagas.
Maybe we can give a super simple checklist, like how to spot a Naga in the wild, audio edition.
Yes, let's do it. A little motif spotting game.
Okay, 3 quick clues. 1. Count the heads. If you see a serpent with many heads in a fan shape, especially an odd number like 7 or 9, that is almost certainly a Naga. Look at where it appears. If the serpent shape is on a bridge, a stair railing, a roof corner, or framing a doorway in Cambodia, think Naga rather than just snake. These are typical Naga positions as guardians and bridges. Khmer Nagas often have very elegant S-curves in the body with flame-like fins. The head might have a crown or a jewel on it. It looks more royal than wild.
Royal snake. I like that.
And then, once you spot one, ask yourself, is this Naga bridging something? Is it at a threshold, a doorway, connecting land and water, or earth and sky? That little question can turn a quick glance into a moment of reflection.
That leads perfectly into our last big theme, walking with Nagas today. For the traveler planning a trip to Angkor, or the Khmer student abroad looking at photos of home on their phone, how can they approach these Naga images respectfully and also playfully, with curiosity?
I always tell people, slow down at thresholds. When you cross a bridge into a temple or climb the first steps of a pagoda, pause for just 2 breaths. Look for Nagas on either side. Maybe touch the stone or the railing lightly, if it's appropriate, and just say quietly in your mind, "Thank you for letting me pass."
I like that. It's like acknowledging the doorkeeper, not just barging into someone's home.
Also, try to connect what you see with what you have learned. If you see a Naga sheltering the Buddha, remember the story of protection from the rain. If you see Nagas lining a bridge, remember the idea of crossing from the human realm into a sacred one. This makes your visit more layered, not just a checklist of photos. And if you are far away, only seeing pictures, you can still greet them. When you see a photo of a Naga on your screen, imagine the water underneath, the rain above, the ancestors behind you. The Naga is not only in the stone, it is also in the story you tell yourself.
That's beautiful, Lokta. The Naga as a way of thinking, not just a shape on a railing.
For anyone who likes visuals, we've made this really easy to continue exploring. On my YouTube channel, I've put together a companion video for this episode, where we walk through Angkor Wat and a few village pagodas just hunting for Nagas. I draw simple outlines on screen so you can see how an abstract pattern is actually a serpent.
And on our Ancient Echoes social pages, we'll post close-up photos and short clips with captions like "Spot the Naga" or "Threshold Guardians." You can pause, zoom in, and practice your Naga detective skills. We also really want to hear from you. If you visited Angkor or any Cambodian pagoda and you have photos of Nagas on bridges, roofs, jewelry, even tattoo designs, share them with us.
Yes! Post your favorite Naga carvings, drawings, or snapshots and tag the show, Ancient Echoes, and my channel. Tell us where you found them or what story you think that Naga is telling. I'll be jumping into the comments and maybe even doing a breakdown video of some of your finds.
This is such a great way to turn listening into a little community treasure hunt. The Nagas are already out there. You just have to notice them and share. As we start to wrap up, I want to pull a few threads together. Today, we met the Naga as an ancestor, the Serpent King whose daughter married an Indian prince, revealing the land that became Cambodia. We followed that serpent into stone, along the balustrades of Angkor Wat and Bayon, guarding stairways and forming sky bridges into sacred space.
We dove into the water, into moats, lakes, and rice fields, where Nagas shape how people understand floods, rain, and the delicate balance that keeps rice growing.
And we ended in everyday life, pagoda roofs, ceiling paintings, offering trays, cloth borders, and modern jewelry and tattoos, where the Naga quietly reminds people of protection, ancestry, and the sacredness of thresholds.
For me, the most powerful thing is remembering that every time you cross a Naga bridge or run your fingers along a serpent railing, you're touching a story that ties land to water, humans to spirits, and Cambodia to its deep past. It's not just stone, it's relationship.
Srey Lin, Lok Ta, thank you both for helping us see Nagas not as exotic snake monsters, but as complex symbols and, in a way, family.
Thank you. I hope next time listeners see a Naga carving, they will pause and say, "Ah, I know you now a little better."
And if you listen carefully, maybe you will hear the Nagas whisper back.
If you enjoyed walking with serpent kings and sky bridges today, make sure you're following Ancient Echoes on your favorite podcast app and on social media. That way you won't miss the photos, videos, and little Naga spotting challenges we're posting.
And come hang out with me on YouTube for the visual side of this journey. Just search for my name, Samnang Bradley, and look for the Naga episode. Drop a comment, tell me which carvings you want a closer look at, and share your own discoveries.
Next time on Ancient Echoes, we'll stay in the world of temple guardians, but move from serpents to stone lions and explore why they sit so proudly at the thresholds of Khmer shrines. Until then, keep your eyes on the bridges and your ears on the stories. Let's unlock the echoes of history together.